Hello, and thank you for joining Thank a Teacher podcast, where guests can thank awesome educators for impacting their lives. Today, we have the honor of hosting Garrett McDonald. Garrett is a middle school counselor, and he's also a husband and a father in Johnson City, Tennessee. Welcome, Garrett.
Let's go. I'm so excited.
Let's go. Thanks so much
Let's
for
go.
being here with us today.
Yeah, you guys are
And
great. I
I'm
watched the first episode and it was so good. It was very Tania, you were great, being very vulnerable. I appreciate it. It was cool to hear about all your parents and everything. Wendy, it was so cool. So I love what you guys are doing for this space and being a place to thank teachers. It's awesome.
Thank you. We really appreciate it.
Yes, we really do. We really appreciate you being here and being our first real guest. We
Yes.
actually couldn't ask for a better, funny guy. I have looked at your Instagram for a while and you have cracked me up. My favorite is the tattoos.
Yeah,
Wait.
you like those? Yeah. Those were fun. Everybody's so nice about those. A couple people were kind of mad that I used AI, but it's what I mean. I don't know. It's a thinking
Yeah,
tool. That's what I call
it
it.
is.
And your
It's-
pictures, the pictures that you post with your slides and stuff, the quotes that you have with your pictures
Oh,
behind.
yeah.
Like you literally take the best pictures. Like you're a
Yeah.
creative thinker when you're taking pictures, I can tell.
Yeah.
Tania put that on TikTok. I hope you don't care. You got on
Oh,
TikTok now.
Love it.
Awesome. Well, we have some questions for you today because we know that you have some teachers that have impacted your life. And we thought we would get your story out there to everybody. And hopefully, those teachers you're going to talk about today will hear your story. So, who were your favorite teachers and what subjects did they teach or what grade were you in?
Yeah. So my favorite teachers, I think back to third grade. It was a big year, like third grade for us. The way that we did it was because third grade you rotated classes for the first time. So it was like a big deal. It was like kind of like this mark of like growing up in elementary school a little bit. And so, so we got my teaching team were these three ladies named Miss Loden, Miss Cashin, and Miss Fowler. And I was in Miss Cashin's homeroom. So yeah, and they taught between the three of them, they taught, math, ELA, science, social studies. So, and just, that my sister, it was my first year. There's always a grade between my sister and I, if that makes sense. So it was my first year in elementary school without my sister there too. So she
Oh,
she had
that's a
gone
big
on to
deal.
she'd gone on to the middle school, and so it was like I was
Right.
rotating now, and my sister was gone. I got to make sure like I don't fall asleep on the bus and get off. You know what I mean? So like she's not going to be there to wake me up in the morning.
You had more
But
responsibilities now because she wasn't there
That
to make
probably
sure you
sucks.
did.
Like I don't have no one to be up for me.
exactly, and and just now as I'm thinking about it, like not to give the longest answer ever, which I'm very good at. Growing up, I lived with my mom, my sister, who I just mentioned, her name's Jordan. We're about a year and a half apart, and then my brother Andrew, who's 10 years older than me. So he had just graduated high school. So that was also my first year without him like in my house. So at that time it was just me and my sister and my brother. So or me, my sister and my mom. Apologies. Because he had went on to college. So
Okay.
third grade was like there's a lot of new stuff going on for me. And yeah, those three teachers definitely made a huge impact on me and that time of my life. So love those three.
Aw.
Yeah, that's amazing. Do you think you can share a specific memory or a moment that stands out to you about a time that you may have had with these teachers or one specific?
Yeah, I think that, a big part, and kind of as I was talking just now about how my life was at the time, it was my sister, like I said, it was a year and a half older than me, and then my mom. It was us three living together, and it was new because my brother did a lot for me, and he was such a big role model for me, and he went off to college, so that was hard, and it was such a small school too. So like just to frame it, it was like I ended up graduating with like 70 people. So like that's
Oh, wow.
that's the kind of
Wow.
so I mean there were maybe 60 third graders. You know what I mean? And so I'm in third grade, and we start in mid August, and going to third grade, doing my thing or whatever, living with my mom and my sister. But in September, I got a note from the office to ride the bus home with my cousin, which wasn't like out of the ordinary, but it's just one of those things I definitely
Y-
remember being like, why am I going home with my cousin? And
You were
so
wondering something, what was going on?
yeah. In my nine, I was 9 at the time. So in my 9-year-old little brain, I was like, what? So I went to my
Mhm.
cousin's house, and the mood was weird. there were people there that I didn't really see except at like family events, like Christmas when we all got together.
Mhm.
And I'm like, why would they be here like randomly? And then, they told me like, hey, you're not going to go to school tomorrow. Your mom is in the hospital. And I was like, what?
Ah.
Like, what? And my mom had a lot of kidney stones, like had a lot of issues with that growing up. I remember it seems like a lot, I don't know, but
Mm.
like she had a lot, but it's not. And so I remember thinking like, I'm sure it's just a kidney stone or whatever.
Mhm.
And the hospital's like 45 minutes away. And my grandmother worked in that hospital in Tupelo, Mississippi, North Mississippi Medical Center. And so we drove like 45 minutes there. And my mom was in the hospital. I didn't really know what was going on. I just knew that she was in the hospital and that was it. I wasn't going to school. So I was like, all right,
You didn't know how serious it was.
You
yeah, I
wasn't
really had
thinking too
no,
much of it.
yeah. I just had no frame of reference to what that was,
As a
or
9-year-old, yeah.
right.
Mhm.
It's just like you go to the hospital because you're sick and then you come out, that's it or whatever.
Mhm.
And I remember going home and staying with my grandparents. I think I stayed with them and we got back up and we went back to the hospital the next day. So we kind of spent the day there and they kept asking me if I wanted to go like visit my mom in the hospital room. And I was like, no, I'll see her when I get out or when she gets out, all that stuff. Well, the day goes on and again, there's people at the hospital that like I haven't seen like since Christmas, since Easter, like all those family gatherings.
Family members,
They,
yeah.
what are they doing here? What are they doing here? And I remember it was very, very somber. Like I just remember like even as a 9 year
Mm.
old, like what is going on? And then my brother, and I remember too, like it was the middle of football. He was a big like football star, and like so he went to college to play football. And I remember he was there during all this, and I remember being like, "Oh, you gotta be at football practice, man! Like you can't be here." And I remember he told my sister and I that he said you need to go. We need to go see mom in the hospital bed or in the room or whatever. And I said, no, I don't want to. I don't want to go see.
Mhm.
And he kind of like, he said, no, you got to come. You got to come. And so I remember going into the hospital bed and seeing her laying there. And she just looked like she was sleeping. And I remember I got on a little stool and I kissed her on the forehead. And then I came back and my brother, 19 years old, sat my sister and I down and told us that mom had passed away. And, my gosh, I just remember my sister like immediately just being so just upset, like visually, it was obvious, obviously.
Wow.
And it didn't register to me for quite some time. I remember like walking out and just being so confused. Anyways, we went home and
In shock, probably.
yeah, absolutely. And there's so many more details I could throw in that just amaze me as I look back on it. But to connect everything back here, I went to school one day and everything was normal. And
Life just
then
went on, right?
right, right. And did the routines of school, all those things, and left my house for the last time. Like I never went back to that house. I never saw my room again. I never saw
Oh,
because my family went and they cleaned everything up for my mom's house and they knew because it was just my mom there. There was no one there to, you know what I mean?
wow.
And so from there, there was, obviously my mom's death was like very difficult and she had a brain aneurysm is what happened. It was a very sudden, it was very like unexpected and,
Sorry
it
for your
was,
loss as well.
thank
Yeah,
you.
very
Thank you so much.
absolutely. It's gotta be devastating as a child to lose that one person that holds everything together.
Yeah, and then from there, almost as bad as the death was like trying to figure out all the custody stuff. Like as a kid, I just remember
Mm,
that. Like, my gosh, that was super difficult. But ended up living with my grandmother and my
okay.
grandfather, my mom's parents, and we saw them all the time. So that was not a huge like change for us in that sense. But to bring everything back to like my teachers and everything, I just think about how I lost this pivotal woman in my life. And then here I am, the middle or like the very beginning of the school year with three women. I've never had three teachers before. And I have these three women that are just providing for me in ways that they don't know, you know what I mean? And
Mm,
filling in these gaps of just motherhood and just being good examples for me and I don't know and just as I've thought about this leading up to this podcast and thought about these three ladies and just it's just pretty remarkable like the things that teachers don't sign up for but they're
yeah,
they're showing up in those ways. You know what I mean? Like none of these three ladies
it's
were
very true.
probably like I doubt any of them were like I can't wait to go to school to be a teacher and fill this void of the little boy's mom. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
But
or
but
kinda step in as a mother
mhm,
figure for
mhm.
you. and you had 3 of them, so they're like
Hmm.
3 special angels or ants, just kind of coming in and
Exactly.
taking care of you and making sure that you were cared for and noticed because, I think that's really important. That sounds like, they didn't realize it was gonna happen, but they took on the role and they just did what they had to do to make sure that you moved on and made it through the year. That's awesome. Well, we hope that Mrs. Fowler, Mrs. Loden, Miss Cashin can hear us today. Do you know how to reach out to them?
Yeah, I do. I ran into Miss Cashin over Christmas break, I think it was. My grandmother who raised me actually passed away in October, so
I'm so
that's been difficult.
sorry. Wow.
Uh, but when we went back through, when we went to church in my hometown, and Miss Cashin was there, and I got to talk to her.
That's so cool.
And then Miss Loden also is. I saw her. I haven't seen Miss Fowler in a little bit, but I talked to her son, and he and I were close in age, and I saw him recently at like a comedy thing I did in Hamilton, which is my hometown. So,
That's
but
awesome.
That's
yeah,
great.
they're still around and still amazing, I'm sure.
I'm sure they are too. And I bet it definitely impacted what you do now as a school counselor. I think it's my turn for a question, right, Tania?
Yes.
So, how did these teachers influence your personal or academic life, Garrett?
I think that some ways that they like influenced me is, you know, like I said, filled that void for me. And a lot of the work, a lot of the things that they were doing, I really kind of saw more as I got older. You know what I mean? I saw
Mm,
the way that they were patient with me, were, they showed me grace, but they still held me accountable. You know what I mean?
yes,
And they wanted me to be successful, in spite of what I dealt with, rather than because of it. They wanted me to do those things to.
break down the obstacles. Mm,
Right, right. And it's just to, especially like you said, as a school counselor now, I've had a lot of students that have lost parents
mhm,
in their time at my school. And, I always reflect back to like my teachers and how they were there for me and
mhm.
how they, just were, I don't know, just they were present, you know what I mean? And
They showed empathy, but
Yeah.
also did what it took, I think.
Try to
And
push you, but still try to make sure you still have like a kid life in you as well.
right, right. And I think and my grandmother did a great job too of, she really valued education, and she really made sure that
awesome.
that was something that was I took serious, and I, respected my teachers and those things like that. And I think that they one way that as I'm trying to think, like I said, leading up to all this, I try to think of like specific moments and specific things and that they've done or whatever. And it takes me to that Maya Angelou quote about like, you might not remember what people said or what they did, but you're always going to remember how they made you feel. And
Mhm.
so like I can't think of like specific times of like, man, Miss Cashin really like he did this for me, or like, Miss Loden really like took the extra time this day and did this. But I
Mhm.
just remember the feeling of what these ladies did for me and when I was in third grade. And
Well, you mentioned their patience, and I think that they just
Mhm.
demonstrated skills that were necessary, I believe, in helping somebody get through grief because they're not going to expect you to get over it right away.
Mhm.
They were probably
Especially with
watching you and knowing like you're probably more reserved, and maybe they tried to involve you in more things or, the things that we naturally would do also now for children who are going through grief. So, like you, I've also had students that have had terrible things happen in their lives, and it definitely makes you more empathetic because, kids shouldn't have to go through those hard things, but they do. And we do have to help them through those things as teachers and educators or school counselors. So we thank you also for being the awesome counselor
yeah,
that you are. And
Yes, you are.
thank goodness you had those great teachers because I definitely think, they had an influence in what you do. And maybe as a
yeah.
father as well.
Yeah, for sure. And, I know we talked about like in our meet and greet or whatever, and there's a guy named Brad Montague who's really great and just an awesome example and just creates positive content and his humor. He's so funny and he's just so great. But he said something that's always stuck with me, and it's his quote, and it's credited to him, but it just sums up why I want to do what I do is, to be who you needed when you were younger. Because I get those opportunities to like be there for kids when their parents are going through things. I get those opportunities to be there for my kids. And it's been so interesting too this year because my son well, he's about to be 10, but he's 9.
It's your
So
age, yeah, the
I've
age
been
you were.
thinking, I've been thinking a lot about like him and like if this like he's at the age when I lost my, you know what I mean? And just how
Yeah,
like, and it's so surreal and it's so like, but I just get the opportunity to be here with him and
every
be
day is a
positive.
blessing.
Yeah,
It is
yeah, it really is.
amazing.
Mhm. Everybody
So
has their challenges
yeah.
in life. Go ahead, Tania. I think you have a
Well, question. Yes.
good
So
question.
apart from, losing your mother at a very young age and having those teachers kind of help you get through it, were there any other challenges that you may have faced aside from, going through grief as a 9-year-old that, your teacher helped you with?
I think, specific challenges, gosh, I can't really, I know that I talked a lot as a kid and
Mm,
I was like a pretty energetic, probably undiagnosed. Well, later on in life, I had been diagnosed with ADHD, but it's something that I've always struggled with, that attention piece. And like,
mm,
I don't think I was ever like a mischievous kid, like doing like bad things. I think I just struggled to stay on task, and I talked a lot and those things. And so that was challenging. And I think that probably was difficult for the teachers, like how do I get this kid that had this terrible life event and
mm,
still hold to the standard of everybody else, and I think they did a
mhm,
great job of that and giving the support but not changing the standard. I think that's something that they did a great job of, and I remember that, and I think about that with kids, and I think about, like, okay, am I helping you by turning a blind eye to this behavior or this, lack of responsibility that you're taking? And am I helping you, or am I like, enabling you in those?
yeah.
Because, I think it would have been so easy for them. And maybe, there were days where they just let things slide, probably,
Mm,
I'm sure. But, and I used to coach a lot, I used to coach, and there was always a saying, like, you either coach it or you allow it to happen, so
mm, yes,
and so you're either like, this is okay, or hey, it's not how we're going to do things around here. And let me tell you this, I struggle with that as a parent. So don't
mm.
think I got it all figured out over here just because I know a fancy quote or whatever. But
Well,
so
they're still children and they still need training no matter what. Like even as a high school teacher, the last 8 years, I feel like they're still children. They need training, and they need to be taught certain things. And because there's still so many skills that need to be taught. It's just such a big world that we're in, and the expectations are changing constantly. So there's always something for me to learn every day. So I'm open to learning myself, and so
yeah,
I love that other people are open to just being led into
yeah,
a direction and allow
Hmm.
someone who cares about you to say, hey, you know what? Maybe you're talking a little too much today and
hmm,
distracting everybody else in your class. If you could just turn it down, turn the volume down just a tiny bit. If you say it kind way, I feel like you can get a good message across to a lot of people, but it just,
I feel like that's so hard in our generation today. I mean, even when I was back in school in 2023, I mean, kids cared about their phones more than anything. So I feel
it's
like
true.
now with these kids getting more like attached to technology, it's getting worse. But it's all about, I feel like depending on the ways you do it. Like even with my niece now, I'll be like, okay, it's time to set the phone down for 5 or 10 minutes. Go read a book or
yeah,
something like so. Yeah.
connect, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And I always, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I say this in the school year, but like,
Garrett's a
Let me
little
let's stop
stuck.
the recording for a minute.
There we go. Yeah. Well, it's okay.
are we
We'll
back?
go back. You're back.
But yeah, I always encourage kids to reflect, and I say this all the time throughout the school year, that you got, at the end of every day or every class or whatever, there's got to be at least one thing that you can think about you could have done better or differently. And when you do that, you create opportunities to grow. And if you don't do that, or
Absolutely.
if you're not willing to look back and say, all right, yeah, I probably shouldn't have said that, or I probably could have done this better, then you're taking away chances for you to grow as a kid and as a,
It's true.
and so I don't know, and that applies to me too. I got to do that as a parent and as a counselor and as a husband. I got to.
Hmm.
Otherwise, no growth happens.
Yeah, that's very true. Be
Very
open
true.
minded. Mhm. Awesome. Well, do you know if these teachers had any unique strategies for engaging the students in your classroom? Like, did they, and this is just, teacher talk, I think, more or less just trying to share and help other teachers who may be struggling with getting students engaged. When we talk about good teaching, sometimes it's just keeping their students and audience entertained, right? But some teachers have different strategies that help the kids in your class engaged. And, your third grade was a long time ago. So you might not remember, but if you can share them with us.
I actually do. Yeah, Miss Fowler, she taught science and social studies, which is it's funny that this strategy was in there, but we did a lot of writing in her class. And I don't know in what capacity. I don't know why we would be, but we did some journaling type of things, and I can remember it always being something that we did. Maybe it was every Monday, maybe it was I don't know what it was. But I
Mm,
just remember writing, and we had a journal,
okay.
and that was I remember a lot of times I wrote about my mom in there, and I can remember like bringing it to Miss Fowler's desk and showing it to her because she would have to check it, and I can remember her just reading it and then just like reaching over and like hugging me really tight, like because
I
I had
love
written
that.
about my
Yeah.
mom, and
That's
again,
awesome.
that's like. And I still write to this day. I love to write jokes. I love to write, poetry. I love to just create in that way. And that was, something that who knows, it could have been something that like was created in those moments with Miss Fowler and just having this place to put thoughts down and I've always loved songs and like imagery and all those things. So that was a strategy that I thought about and
That's
that really
awesome.
helped me. And another one that I wanted to share was growing. So my mom was a single mom and she worked and she was in school and she was trying to do her thing and everything. And I just remember thinking how cool it was that other kids' parents got to be at the school, like for a party
Yeah.
or for an awards day or for whatever it was. And even though I knew like a lot of times my mom was not going to be able to be there, I still like held out hope that maybe she would come or like, you know what I mean? And so
Yeah.
I always wanted her to be there. Well, I remember sharing that with my grandmother in some way. Like I always wanted mom to come to our things and she couldn't. Well, my
Mhm.
grandma made sure to be at every time parents were allowed to be at the school, she showed up.
That's
You know, I
awesome. Good grandma.
Thank
it
you,
makes me kind of
grandma.
like yeah, a
But
little misty eyed thinking about it, but like, just I remember a Valentine's party, my grandma coming and bringing all our stuff and just like and these like field day things. My grandma had no idea how to operate, like a boom box for the musical chairs, but she figured it out. You know what I mean? But
mhm.
she
So
was able
cute.
to have those moments because the teachers and the school allowed that, and I think that
Mm.
it is a safety thing and it's hard and it's all that stuff. But like, man, that made such an impact on my life being able to have her in the school building. So I think that was such an awesome thing. And, for the teachers, I'm sure it's a lot. You gotta have the parents in it. Oh my goodness, I know it's a lot of moving parts and all those things, but it really is like, it was like the first times that I can remember, like me being able to have a parent at school. And it was so cool. I thought it was so cool.
That
And
for you. I'm
yeah,
very happy that she took care of you in that way.
They
yeah,
probably thought that was like a safe space for you, to have someone, close to you, know that you lost a very important person in your life. So that's amazing that, the school really considered and thought like, okay, maybe he needs to have his grandmother closer to him rather than just at
yeah,
home.
yeah, exactly. I think that's exactly, and I'm glad they allowed for that and created that space. And then like I said, I go on these rabbit trails, but like, and to think of it too, like my grandmother, she's just lost a daughter. She's raising these two kids.
Exactly.
She works nights as a nurse. Working she leaves at 5. She works from 7 p to 7 a. She comes back.
She's an angel too.
She's
But she's
taking
going through it, but she's trying to push to make sure y'all are okay.
yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, and so, and I think that, through my grandmother, through these teachers, that a lot of the good that has come to me or all those things are, it's like a product of people putting me before themselves. And I'm so thankful for that.
Yeah. I love
That's
that.
So
amazing.
And the fact that you can self-reflect and hold that gratitude, I think is really it shows good character, because not everybody feels that they should be thanking people that have changed their life. And Tania and I do. And so we're so happy that you
Mm.
are one of those people that also does because now you're changing lives. And one day there's going to be kids that are like looking up to you thinking that man was so patient with me and he made me laugh and he brought me so much joy during my hard times. So, it's going to go full circle. which is
Yeah,
exciting.
yeah,
20 years from now, you'll be looking back. Tania was one of my students, and she's now a mom, and it's exciting to see her in, her element and thriving. So, you never know. Full circle.
Teachers really impact your life, not only just from aside from your family, but these teachers that come in every day, slowly but surely, they change and think about thinking, life, having a family, stuff like that. So it's just amazing that, you're gonna have kids to be able to do that with you.
yeah, yeah. I hope so. And there's been some, I had some challenging things professionally, like earlier this year at school, and just some things I was trying to navigate. And I had on my Instagram a former student who's in college now. They sent me a text or a message on Instagram that said like, "Hey, I just wanted to say." You were my fifth grade counselor, and you came into McAllister's one day when I was working in high school, and you remembered my name, and that meant so much to me. And I'm in
I
school to
love that.
do early education, and it's just like, gosh,
It's
there
already
are
happening, Garrett.
yeah, there's a lot of moments that you don't expect to be the ones that they remember, and so, but yeah, and so, but I'm glad for this podcast to create that platform to say thanks and to get that story out there. So yeah, thankful for
Yeah,
you
for
guys as well.
sure. Well, thank you. Thank you.
What
Big
life
question to me.
lesson did you learn from the teachers or teachers that you still carry with you today?
I talked about like giving support and not changing the standard. I think that's a big thing that I learned from them, and just that whole year together. And these aren't my words, but just that adversity is a terrible thing to waste. Like this is
Mm,
like had this terrible thing happen, and it's it literally is something that I think about every day. You know what I mean? That loss
mhm.
and that event. But I also think about and there's really like crappy, stinky days. You know what I mean? It's not like I had this thing happen to me and I'm like so strong and tough because of it. You know what I mean? There's like days where it's like really, really hard. There's
For
seasons of
sure.
life, like, like 4 or 5 years ago or 2018, whenever that was. That was a long time ago. That was a really, really difficult year for me. And you probably wouldn't have heard me say that adversity is a terrible thing to waste during that time. But, just through appropriate resources and coping skills and things like that, just learning how to deal with those. And yeah, and so just like learning from them, just, to every kid needs something different, that whole fair
Mhm.
versus equal thing. I'm going to give you the things that you need. I'm not going to give everybody the same thing. When I need to, we're going to get everybody's going to be held to the same standard in a sense, but also we're going to be able to, give each kid what they deserve. And a lot of times, and I think they did a great job of that. So
I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And I totally agree with you on that. I don't think anybody gets by without, something they think about all of their life. And we have to remind ourselves that it doesn't define us. And like you're writing good material and you're writing in a journal. I've also written a memoir about crazy stuff that happened in my life. And it was like once I got it out of me, it felt so much better to just put it on paper because there were stories that I didn't really share with everybody. They were more my secrets, and I just showed up every day and smiled and just made it seem like everything was normal and fine. And I think that's a skill that you learn over time, especially when working with children who are struggling, because you have to be the strong one for them. So you're probably practicing that every day too, Garrett, and you don't realize it.
yeah. And I think Tania talked about it too on you guys' last episode with the audiovisual stuff in high school that you did, right? And like how that
Mhm.
became an
Yeah.
awesome like outlet for you, and now it's led to like your degree and your hopefully your profession someday. So like these people investing in us, and then also creating avenues for coping and for
I
livelihood. It's
totally
kind of so
understand you. I totally understand you on that. 'Cause I feel like with me, I lost my grandmother on my mom's side, my eighth grade year in December. So coming back to
Mhm.
school from Christmas break, kind of dealing with that, everybody's kind of happy about the clothes and shoes and stuff they got, and
Mm.
dealing with that, that kind of sucks. And then I feel like
Mhm.
during COVID, losing my grandmother on my dad's side, it's kind of like, you really can't go anywhere to get help because everything's kind of shut down. So the only
It's true.
available options is like online and Zoom. So I can definitely understand coming from, a point of losing somebody and, just things and life is happening, at you. So it's understandable for sure. And made me who I am to, want to advocate more and want to record. you know?
Yeah, yeah, and it's just those people in our life that are there, and they, sometimes it's a sport or it's a club or
Mm.
it's just writing in a journal, and
Mhm.
so thankful those people are there to like have those spaces.
Allow you to have your outlet. Yeah, absolutely. If you could say one thing to those awesome teachers, Mrs. Fowler, Miss Loden, Miss Cashin, what would you say to them today?
Miss Fowler, Miss Loden, Miss Cashin, I would say thank you guys so much. Like it's not lost on me the patience that you had with me and the care that you gave me. And I think about it often. I think about it
Mm.
with my own children. I think about it with my students, and I just appreciate what you guys did me and so many other kids. I have my story, but there's so many other kids that I'm sure that you guys, Miss Loden, Miss Fowler, and Miss Cashin, like impacted and could be on a podcast and tell all kinds of awesome stories about the things that you guys did. So
Are they still teaching today?
I think Miss Loden is still teaching. I
Okay.
think Miss Cashin and Miss Fowler are retired, I think. But yeah, they're great, and I know they'd hug my neck if they saw me. So
I'm sure they would.
always open for that.
And I'm sure they're very proud of you too.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope so, and I hope
Mhm.
I love my hometown of Hamilton, Alabama, and I hope that I do make that community proud and everything. And so my sister is still there, and her
That's
son and
awesome.
Isaac. Shout out to my nephew Isaac. He's a freshman. I can't believe he'll be 15 this month. That's crazy.
And you have kids. How old are your kids?
Yeah, so I have a 9-year-old for a couple more weeks. He's almost 10, and a 6-year-old.
It's nice. Is there anything else you would like to share about this experience with the audience?
Yeah, I think just
Tell us where we
take
can
those up.
find you, where guests can find you.
Yeah, so Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Garrett McDonald Comedy, like the restaurant, just like the restaurant. I
Donald.
talk about that in some of my material about my last name and how students love to make fun of it. But yeah, if you go on my Instagram or my TikTok, there's a link. It takes you to a link tree, which is kind of like my website. It just has some upcoming dates on there, all my socials, and like if you want to book me to like perform, or I'm working on a keynote, maybe you want to have me talk at your in service or whatever. I don't know. Yeah, you can find me there. And yeah, it's awesome. I just love being able to create positive content that's uplifting to hopefully educators and people of all walks of life. So
Yeah, and Garrett has a big show on July 6th in Nashville, right?
yes, yeah. So July 6th in Nashville, there's a comedy club called Zanies, and there's a comedian named Nate Bargatze, who's very popular right now. He just had a movie come out called The Breadwinner. But he's
Very
great. He's an awesome, clean comedian, and he's done a lot for like the clean comedy space. And one of those things is creating this weekly showcase at Zanies called Nate Land Live. And so it's kind of a big deal to get on that show as like a clean comedian. And I've been trying to get booked for like since I started comedy, so like over a year. Finally got booked, so I'll be on there July 6th. So come out to
so
Nashville.
exciting.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
thank you. It's
So if
great.
you're from Nashville, you gotta tune in. You're gonna see a spot.
That's right.
Garrett McDonald, everybody.
That's right.
So we all know that you're an awesome school counselor, and I could not thank you enough for being a guest here on our podcast and for the lives that you're impacting every day as well. So thank you for everything you do for everybody out there in Johnson
Thank you, too.
City, Tennessee, as well as Alabama.
That's right.
So
Yeah.
we are thrilled that you came on our show today and
Honored, honored, honored.
very honored. Yeah, I'm gonna make it to one of your comedy clubs and shows at some point. I was hoping to try and
Same
make it
here.
out this summer, but we'll see because right now I get kind of scared driving too far anymore. I seem to fall asleep after 4 hours, and that's kind of dangerous if
Yeah,
you're
you don't want that.
traveling long distance.
Yeah.
So after 4 hours, my eyes just get so tired, and I have to literally pull over for like an hour and just wake myself up. So
Wow.
otherwise, I'm off the road. So anyway, I will make it out one day, even if I fly out. But you're awesome, and Tania and I are
Same
thrilled.
here.
So
Yeah.
For
Thank
real.
you. Yeah. Thank you guys
it's
for having me.
also Garrett's birthday. So before we leave today, we
That's
want to say
right.
happy birthday to Garrett
Happy
McDonald because
birthday.
Thank you. Thank
we're
you.
airing
Gemini
this on
season.
his birthday. Woot woot.
It's a gift
So
to me.
join
It's a
us.
gift.
That's right. And we just ask everybody here, join us every week. We have new guests. We are on Spotify and YouTube right now. We also have a website. So if you want to be a guest, you can go to our website at www.thankateacherpodcast.com. And we also would love more followers on Instagram at nope, that's not a W dot. That's just an at Thank a Teacher podcast. So we are about ready to complete our podcast here today. So I wanted to tell everybody to have a great week and class dismissed. Have a great summer. Have a great week. We'll see you soon. Thank you, Garrett.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much. Thank